Meeting at the municipality. An experience that changed everything. One cold December day, I found myself at the municipality's office near Koldinghus, nervous about the approaching meeting. There was so much at stake for me. My future and my destiny were about to be negotiated and finalized. I had to be on the ball. I would by no means appear as a victim, which I was, or as a person who couldn't look after their own life. So I had come to the municipality and called this meeting myself. I was going to manage this process myself. It's probably me over-dramatizing here again, but I felt that my destiny was to be decided that day. And it all depended on my ability to communicate. Attending the meeting was a consultant from Dansk Blindesamfund, the Danish Association of the Blind, a retention advisor, and a social worker, both from the local job center. We were to decide how I could get a part-time job. Yes, you heard that right. That's where I was. Not that there's anything wrong with a part-time job. They help many people remain in the labor market. But for me, it was a completely inconceivable situation that I hadn't seen coming just a few months before. A major part of my identity was bound to my work and my job. I was a senior art director, and now I was going to have a part-time job. If I wasn't a senior art director, what would I be? Just Morten, who struggled with his vision and his faded self-worth and esteem? Something happened to me in the middle of that meeting. The social worker, who was helpful, understanding, and accommodating, began to talk about the measures that would need to be taken to get me into a part-time job. The job center advisor talked about assessment processes, job testing, interdisciplinary committees that would judge my case and action plans. The consultant from the Danish Association of the Blind talked about the limitations and challenges generally faced by blind people. I felt lost. Actually, right there in that moment, I felt that nothing mattered. They could take my job, my house, my damn car, my family, my life. I had lost everything. I had lost me. Municipal rules and clauses were mentioned, and from the emptiness, I heard a clear voice speak over the people sitting around me. "What do you want to do with your life, Morten?" But the voice didn't come from anywhere in the room. It was inside me. Just like back in the cell phone store, I experienced an unexpected ability to see clearly, and for a brief moment I felt as if I had unlimited access to infinite knowledge. Knowledge that was telling me what to do. The epiphany lasted long enough for me to interrupt the social worker in the middle of his sentence. I distinctly remember his astonishing expression as I burst out, "I'm not going to have a part-time job, so we might as well just end this meeting." There was silence for a moment, and everyone looked at me a little confused. I'm not at the stage where I need a part-time job. I experienced something that many people will not to having experienced themselves. A moment of complete insight into your life and the world in which we find ourselves. An instant of such deep insight that you ask the absolutely right question at the absolutely right time. It was an overwhelming experience and something I was able to explore further over the next year. A year that changed my life and made me view my life and the world we live in a completely different way. That day in the municipality's office, I changed course from Hopelessness Street. Now I was headed for Possibility Road, and thus started the first day of my new life. It was the day when old Morten, died, and a new one was born. Newborn Morten decided to choose life and embrace its possibilities. Without knowing it at this point, I started an inner journey that has given me knowledge that I had no idea existed. What happened in that office? When I heard the voice and was filled with a new inner energy, I felt lighter than I had felt in years. It was as if an elastic on the heavy baggage I had been dragging around snapped. I felt free and relieved. One moment I felt that my life was over. I'd lost everything, my position at the Lego group, my sense of being in control and being the master of my own life. I had lost my identity, the one I had desperately been clinging to all these years. The identity that made me, me. Without my identity, what was I? Now that the elastic had snapped, where the old me was dead, I felt freer than ever before, because I still existed. I was still alive, I could breathe, I could feel life inside me. Despite my identity now being dead, I wasn't dead. I was finally free. It finally dawned on me that I was not my identities, my thoughts, and my limitations. I was the consciousness that noticed all these illusions. I no longer needed to be anything specific. I just had to be. I am. For several days after the meeting at the municipality's office, I walked around strangely cut off from all my old problems. I could no longer see why they were so problematic and worrying. It was as though I had been distant from it all. Everything that I later came to realize about my meeting at the municipality's office, I hadn't realized at this point. I didn't understand what had happened. I could just feel that something was happening. It was only several months later that I gained the knowledge needed to understand it, or viewed it in another way. I created a new story, the story we call our lives. Question upon question began to emerge. New doors had opened in my mind. Unknown doors that might have been there all along, but which I just hadn't been ready to see. Doors to be opened and explored. I was slowly beginning to see a meaning in all of it. I knew I had to find a way out of the situation I was in. Now I had a mission. I had questions that I needed to find answers to. 1. How do I move from a life of limitations and hopelessness to a life of joy and freedom of mind? 2. How can I, with joy, openness and curiosity, find the will, power and desire to face my uncertain future? I concentrated on these two visions. My job at the Lego Group was, of course, important. My family was important. But if I didn't clarify these two matters, I would find neither my way nor my future. I had glimpsed Possibility Road, but only a peak. I was still on Hopelessness Street, but if I was going to find Possibility Road again, I would have to change how I dealt with my challenges. I was on my way. I had formulated goals for my life in the form of questions. They became the objectives I was going to pursue, and as they weren't material in nature, weren't superficial, but rather prerequisites for a happy and fulfilling life, they were goals that received my absolute focus. I couldn't think of anything else. A voice kept repeating in my head, "Morten, what do you want to do with your life?" Every cell of my body knew that I had to do this. I wrote down the new goal for my life on a piece of paper and held it up in front of me. I had written this: Despite RP, I want to live a happy life and see possibilities rather than limitations. Both my conscious mind and my heart knew that this was my life goal. So I was already certain that I would find my way. I had decided I would. And in the hunt for answers to those new questions, answers to some of my old questions, which I listed at the beginning of the book, surfaced. They would prove to be of great importance for my continuing journey, because the old questions, or blockages, if you will, turned out to be the cause of my hopeless state of mind and dark thinking, not my eye condition. These old questions were: why don't I dare take chances? Why don't I think I'm good enough despite others telling me I am? Why don't I just do what I set out to do? Why don't I dare? And so, with no idea of how the answers were going to come to me, I embarked on my new mission. I had my goal, a desire my heart burned for, though without any expectations of how to find the answers. I already knew they would come. I had formulated my goal for the universe. Now it was time to allow greater powers to do their work and to trust that my belief in myself would help me further. The book will be available in the summer of 2020 as audiobook, as an ebook, and of course as a paper book. Look out for updates on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and mortenbunde.dk.